few seconds here.
April. I'll close that door.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. 5 p.m. We'll start off with roll call to my left.
Marcus Fuentes,
Jim Welch.
Brian Griffin, Troy Griggs.
All right, now we'll move on to citizens' comments. Is there anybody who would like to offer a comment? We'll open that at 5 p.m. and close it, there being none. Move on to item number 4, the approval of the minutes. Minutes from the special called meeting on March 25th, 2026. Those are in our packets, and would entertain comments or a motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
Since I wrote them, I might as well I move that we accept the minutes from the March 25th meeting.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, now we're going to move into discussion. Just up front, we will move item B, the discussion of sections 4 and 5 of the draft signage ordinance, and guide future revisions to the end of our discussion items because we do have a hard stop at 7 p.m. So if we're pushing on that item will be tabled and carried over to the next meeting. So let's start with item A. It's the discussion and appropriate action to review and make appropriate recommendations related to parkland dedication revisions in the subdivision ordinance.
Okay. So so Adriana, who is the president of the Parks Board, is here. She's going to kind of open it up to give y'all some backstory and what the goal was to create these updates to the parkland dedication ordinance. And then after that, I'll get into it a little bit, and then we'll kind of tag team your questions since they are the ones that did create this, drafted, and now I'm just bringing it to y'all. Okay?
All right.
All right. Hi. Yes, I'm Adriana Arrington-Culp from the Parks Board. Councilman Bob Lee last year wanted the Parks Board to review the parkland dedication ordinance section, and we worked on that through the winter. And this is the what you're seeing, I think, is the attorney version of what we worked on. Plus, there were some recommendations from council as well. We were our goal was to definitely increase the fee in lieu of payments because that calculation is pretty low at times. And then also to make sure the parkland dedication the parkland dedication is actually consistent and more valuable than it was, because I think there's a little bit of loopholes in the current language. So I'm curious to hear what your discussion is on this. But as I was researching different ordinance from different cities, it seems like in particular, I like the city of Seguin's ordinance. The parks director there gave me some great feedback on how he's able to leverage their ordinance to really prioritize what the parks needs when a new subdivision is coming and or something is just subdivided. They're able to keep up with parkland amenities or park amenities that need to be improved or upgraded. And then they're also able to kind of save or bank cash or really wait and get parkland dedication that makes sense for what the city needs, like not just every little tiny tidbit of land around. So I would hope that we could kind of pass this one quickly, this update, just to catch the low-hanging fruit of what's in the current ordinance. And then maybe in the next year, work on really modernizing the city's current ordinance to something. There's like a lot of cool things that different cities do. And that helps keep up with the growing population because, we have like 2 main parks really for Castroville, and those are getting heavily used. So it'll be nice to like work toward the future and help the city plan for how to use the parkland dedication to the best. So, if you have questions, let me know.
All right, we might. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to come present to us.
All right, so I'll take over from here. So in your packet, you have the current ordinance of what's required in the subdivision, and then you have the revised ordinance from what was drafted from the Parks Board, and it did go through legal also, just to make sure everything in here is legal as we're stating it. So this is based on the Parks Board, but also this already went to council, and they did have some recommendations, so it was changed to reflect those recommendations. Those recommendations were, of course, I don't have them right there in front of me. Here it is. All right, so usability standard, at least 65% of the required parkland dedication must be considered usable or buildable land rather than being comprised primarily of drainage or otherwise constrained areas. Approval authority, language referencing the city in subsection F should be revised to specify city council approval. And then for fee in lieu of usage, references to CIP projects should be updated to capital projects to allow for broader applicability of collected funds. So pretty minor recommendations to this ordinance when it was brought to council about 2 months ago. All right. So the goal of this is just to ensure that we get usable parkland and to clarify when the fee in lieu of is applied. So the major changes is right now we have a very just if you go over this, you're required to donate 5% as dedicated parkland. So if you're over 100 lots, or if you're more than 5 acres, I believe it is, then you're just required to dedicate 5%. But it doesn't have any a lot of constraints as to what that looks like, what that should be used for. And then on top of that, it says that anything less than that shall pay a fee in lieu of, which the Parks Board kind of didn't necessarily like, because there's probably areas where there should be a park, that maybe even if it's a small subdivision, or maybe even if it's a small area, that maybe they should be able to donate parkland instead of it being a fee in lieu of. But based on your current ordinance, that's not allowed. So that's another distinction. And then what also they got into was that instead of it being just one hard number, they broke it out into dedicated thresholds. So the first one's 5 to 200 acres, and that's 5%. So that kind of matches up what you're seeing right now. But then developments over 200 acres, it gives a little bit more. So the developer must dedicate 5% of the gross site area and construct recreational amenities on the dedicated land. And then it gives you an idea of what those amenities are. So that's a more detail than what you're seeing right now in your current parkland ordinance. And then it also gives you valid parkland criteria, because that's another thing that's not stated in the parkland dedication right now, is what should be in that parkland. It just says dedicate your land, but then it doesn't say you have to build a playground. So if you go through Westheim Village, it's a great neighborhood, and maybe it doesn't need a park, but in order to meet that requirement, they dedicated the land, but now it's just an open lot. And so there's no park, there's no dog park, there's no anything on there. It's just a vacant lot. But maybe in the future, if the city wants to require, which is up to city council, and they can say, yes, we do, or no, we don't. But at least it gives that option of what it should be. So, and then just ownership and maintenance, of course, anything of parkland may be accepted for city ownership or maintained by the HOA. That's usually determined at the time of the development agreement. That's not usually something that y'all get into the weeds on. But these new subdivisions that are coming on, most of the time it's through HOA, and they're the ones that are responsible for maintaining that parkland. So let's see. And then the last section is cash payment in lieu of dedication. So the FILO fee, which is the fee in lieu of. And like I said, this gives a different calculation than what is what we require at this time. Right. Oh yeah, the fee shall equal 5% of the finished land value of the development's total acreage. The value must be supported by a current appraisal paid for by the developer and reviewed and approved by the city. So right now, our FILO fee is 5% of the land, but it's just of the appraised value at that point, not if it was developed. So a lot of these parcels out here, if they're not developed, they're worth next to nothing. So for instance, Country Village, even though they have 54 lots out there, it's a significant impact to the neighborhood, you would think. They were only required to pay, I think it was $9,000 to the parkland dedication, which they don't have a park out there. So that means that they're going to go utilize Lions Park, Regional Park, which the city has to maintain. And it doesn't really seem like enough for that size of community, you know?
$9,000 would be like a shade cover, maybe 10 by 12 or something.
Yeah.
It's not much, so to make it
Yes. And so just to make it more significant, what they're recommending is do 5% of the finished land value, which of course will drive that price up a little bit. And this is not new. This is what a lot of cities already do in their current ordinances for parkland dedication. So, okay, so I went through that. What are y'all's first thoughts? And we'll start with questions. I had all these slides, but then I ended up just going through the ordinance. So we'll just do it that way.
Question for you, Brianna, on that last example with talking about the current ordinance and the appraised value for the FILO fee.
Mm-hmm.
Was that value pulled from like county tax records, or did they go out and get a third party appraisal?
No, so specifically in that ordinance, it says the county appraisal district. Yeah, so, and I don't know if it's written. Let's see. Yeah, so it says as determined under section 1, it says the total appraised value of the subdivision property as determined by the Medina County Appraisal District. So that number is pulled directly off of the appraisal district.
Okay, well, there's a difference there, though, that I think we need to all consider. The appraisal district value is, what we all go argue every year because it sets our tax base and whatnot. It oftentimes does not match exact market value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you went out and got a comp from a realtor
Mm-hmm.
or an appraiser, I think those values would be different.
Got it.
And that third party appraisal would come in higher.
Yeah.
And so not knowing your example story, I'll just share, like, coming into this, I do think that the FILO fees are very important, especially given the city's financial state and where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
But current land values, they're high. So if somebody went to go buy a 100-acre tract, you're at least, I would say, $12,000 to $15,000 an acre if you're lucky in this region,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I was thinking coming into it that current value FILO fees would be fair, but if we're seeing cases where they're low,
Mm-hmm.
I would question what is that value basis, and then where do we sit it to achieve our goal,
Mm-hmm.
but not be exorbitant in what we charge, because there's a lot of improvements and costs that go into a subdivision
Mm-hmm.
that when you look at the finished value, it's really, really high. And that finished value, that fee, let's speak to the fee, is going to revolve around and go back to the home costs. The developer isn't just going to take it out of their pocket. It's going to roll into the finished home cost.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have more expensive lots, which sound good. Oh, it's a higher price point. However, people can only afford so much. So then your quality of your home or something has to sacrifice to make up for that additional cost.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a discussion point that I wanted to bring in here, is understanding where that FILO fee calculation should land. And
Reasonable market, so to say.
yeah, and in my mind, it stood out. Should it be current land value with the intent of the city should be able to take that money and go buy the same amount of land in the area, or finished improved land value, which is going to be extremely high?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there was in-depth discussions leading into that set verbiage, but I do understand the intent behind it.
Yes.
Just question if that is truly fair where we should land.
And Adriana, you were involved in those discussions, so if you, at any point, if you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, because I wasn't. I said,
We'll ask the rest of the crowd to behave themselves.
Yeah. But when you speak, if you could speak at the podium, yeah. And so, did you want her to see, kind of get a thought process behind that?
Yeah, so it's really expensive to like buy anything. I mean, you get the land, right? And you're saying it's like 12,000 for a lot, perhaps. It's really expensive to finish it out. You have irrigation for a park, electrical sometimes, landscaping. You got to work on drainage probably, and then just like we price out that playground at Lions Park, and of course that one has extra features, but it's expensive. So in the research I did, a lot of cities even have two fees that they require the developer to cover. They have a development fee and also the actual like parkland dedication fee. So if you're just in that state where you're like, I'm going to do a fee, I'm a developer and I have to cover this fee, they actually have two, and they're getting like thousands and thousands of dollars. And the developers are paying for it because obviously Seguin and these other cities are developing all this stuff. I know there's like trade-offs both way. I just hate to see parks here in Castroville suffer because our it's kind of old, right? And the county values or the appraised values don't track with what actually takes to cover a park to be finished out. So you get shortchanged. You're like, oh, I can only just buy like a shade cover, for example. There was one other thing. So the change that's in there was the quickest way to increase the fee with it still being kind of fair, because you have to be able to I think the word is like justify it in court, like right, like there's a lot of law that we have to deal with too. So I didn't want it to be like just some random number we pick out of a hat, but it's got to kind of track with how things cost. If that makes sense.
In your discussions with City of Seguin, is that what they use to calculate their?
Yeah, it's a lot more elaborate of an ordinance. They have options to say, like, if you're dedicating parkland, this is what I care about, is you have to do this much parkland, and then maybe you finish it out as a developer and you put the amenities on it, or you pay a fee and we'll do it. Or you go down the philo route and you say, okay, I'm going to do this math. And there's more elaborate math than the Seguin one to prove that you're getting the right amount of money. Because you can do like, it's per lot, right? I believe on some of the things where it's like a couple $1,000s per lot, like, and they do all that math. You have to prove it out basically. So the version we have here that kind of was like, well, this is probably what gets us kind of a little bit closer to fees that make sense without really having to do a lot of math, because there's like research papers on this and stuff. So,
but this is going to impact very few developments, because this is just, if we were to pass this ordinance, or if city council was to, it would only impact the 5 acres and less, correct?
Well, no, it would impact any subdivision that's not going to be a planned unit development. Because a planned unit development, they go based off of open space, and they have all their own requirements and how much it has to be and how much can be floodplain and all of that stuff. This is going to impact things. Recent subdivisions was going to be that Country Village Phase 2 that's getting ready to come on, Country Village Phase 1, West Time. Trying to think, not even Heights of Castroville, not Flat Creek, not Alsatian Oaks. So it's going to have a very minimal impact on subdivisions, because we don't have a lot of build out that's left here within the city limits to do something like that. So it's going to be maybe a smaller subdivision like a West Time versus the Alsatian
like infill stuff, right? More smaller infill things. And I think too, we tried to word it to where we want, like, this is heavily geared toward, let's get parkland dedication just to get a little bit more land. But I mean, that could be changed if you want more of an option.
That's a good point. Troy, you bring up a good question. The way I read this is it applies to city limits and ETJ as well. But that would be your standard subdivisions, to your point, not your PUD plans, because
That's
they
correct.
have their own set of open space criteria.
Yeah, and theirs is
that.
pretty. That's supposed to be the trade-off for allowing smaller lot size is to have more open space. So, and I'm sorry, I'm talking off the top of my head, but I believe it's 20%. A plan unit development has to bring 20% open space, so which is way more significant than what's required per the standard parkland dedication. So,
And those are different calculations, though, as far as what's allowed.
yes.
So it doesn't quite match this ordinance. But I guess back to that, I read it the same way as far as the FILO fee. The verbiage is geared towards a smaller acre and then a special exception if it's a larger development to get approved for the FILO fee. If the city does need fees, maybe a softening of that language to make it easier to pay the FILO fee would encourage developers to entertain paying the fee instead of parkland dedication. The reason I mentioned that and going back to the point of who does this impact is when you look at the map of the city limits, like that's city of Castroville and what we control. The rest of the ETJ area, we have an ordinance that will apply out there, but unfortunately those developers in those areas have the ability to opt out of the ETJ with a 45-day process. All they have to do is submit a written request and it's done. We've had 285 acre tract by the airport do that. And so as we're drafting the ordinances and my personal mindset going in and reviewing them is just thinking of what can we do to get what the city needs and wants, but not be so onerous on the developer that they say, you know what, I'm going to pull the cord and opt out.
Yeah.
And so there's a balance there that I think we have to understand as we craft these ordinances and revise them. So that was kind of my mindset in reviewing it, and the notes that I've made is what do we see elsewhere in the industry in other towns, and what are the developers going to be able to absorb before they say this is too much.
Yeah. And Adriana, when y'all were doing your research, how many other cities' ordinances did y'all look at?
I personally talked with the parks director at Seguin, but I kind of surveyed Bernie, Dripping, obviously Seguin. Where was one other one? New Braunfels. That they have a really elaborate one too. And they even have a user guide that goes with the ordinance to know how to do the math for like the fees or for the parkland dedication. So they're kind of cool. Like you start looking at all their master plans and stuff. So they're
Adriana's
a lot more
been
substantial.
geeking out about all this stuff.
There's been a lot of work that's gone into
Oh,
this.
yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean,
So it's-
I walk into any park now, I'm like, wow. Have you gone to Kyle recently? Because
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Kyle's got some cool
they
stuff.
have some nice parks.
But most of those, they have the annexation ability, don't they? They're able to annex land versus Castroville cannot. That's why we're having to go through the negotiation process. We can look at all this and yes, anything inside the city limits we can enforce, but anything outside, it's a negotiation process, unfortunately.
And so that's the mechanism I don't understand, and I didn't research it very much. I mean, you see all up and down I-35 in different cities, they're getting these developers to build these huge, beautiful parks, and there's houses everywhere. Like, how do you attract that here? So that's a bigger question.
Yeah, very true. A lot of them, I think, ties to allowable minimum lot size. Like Kyle's example allows smaller lots. Castroville's 12,000 square foot minimum standard development. So when developers are able to achieve the density they need to offset the additional infrastructure costs, the deal works. But if they have to buy a lot of land and only get a few lots out of it, it's hard for them to put additional money into improvements.
Yeah, and I think also you're seeing full build outs of those subdivisions already, because if you go look at House Station Notes in Flat Creek, they do, like I said, because our plan unit development ordinance requires a large amount of open space, they are going to have like a huge, like I think it's 3 don't quote me on this, I think it's between 2 and 3 acre like amenity center with parkland around that. I think at one point they were saying they're going to put trails inside the floodplain. Flat Creek, they're utilizing the entirety of their floodplain that runs directly between their units, and putting trail systems that connects back up to their huge amenity center. So you're also seeing subdivisions that are already completely built out. I think that once these subdivisions have gotten to that scale, that you'll be seeing some of those things too. Yeah.
And those improvements they're doing are to comply with the PUD plan approach that they've chosen to do because it allows that higher density.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they don't get, from the floodplain standpoint, you don't get full credit for the floodplain.
No.
You amenitize it by putting a trail in, and then you get 50%
Yeah.
credit on an acreage basis for it.
Mhm.
That was another thing that stood out to me here was, the not really enticing. Well, it speaks to floodplain, but then it says, was it the wording on it? If designed for recreational use, specifically designed for recreational use under usability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the language in here is very good. Maybe we could just polish it a little bit more to be more specific and to avoid leniency for interpretation, because something specifically designed for recreational use, as opposed to a trail system or something like that, helps whoever's reading the code for the first time know what the rules of engagement are to help them come to the city with a better plan.
Okay.
I think that's one thing that I see from the engineering side of things is the more we can understand up front before we even draw a layout for the developer helps us get them to a better product and understanding of if it's a real development or not up front. Because they put this land under contract and they may only have 60, 90 days to create a whole financial pro forma and see if it's a go, no go. After that, they're spending more money.
Mm-hmm.
So time is really of the essence up front for them. So ways to more clearly identify what the requirements are and streamline the process are important to developers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, encouraging specific improvements in the floodplain and letting them know, hey, that's okay, you can get credit, but it's only, if we wanted to mimic the PUD plan, it's 50% credit in the floodplain or something that outlines
like
those
that.
numbers,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I think that was part of council's. They said 65% or some number.
Yeah, let's see. It said at least one of the council discussion points was a usability standard. At least 65% of the required parkland dedication must be considered usable or buildable land rather than being comprised primarily of drainage or otherwise constrained areas. So, Adriana, do you know if these updates were already made in this one, or this?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I apologize, guys. I thought it was already made in this.
It didn't seem like it when I read it.
Yeah, I guess they wanted to bring it because that kind of speaks to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So y'all were on the same page there. That's great.
That's great.
And because that speaks specifically to the usability standard, and that's what you were just talking about. Does after reading or after what I just said about the 65% of the required parkland dedication, does that fall more in line with what you think it should read?
It covers the comment that I had.
Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
In our development process as it sits for non-PUD plan approaches, which we haven't had a whole lot, do we have a master parks plan where we can overlay that and say, hey, your property falls in an area where our parks board and department have plans for this improvement, or does that exist?
We do have a master parks plan. Does it identify new areas for parks?
Not new areas. It just says we need them.
Yeah.
The other thing that does help a little bit more is the active transportation plan. If that gets accepted, then that has potential locations for trails, and then you could probably attach parks onto there.
So yeah, because
But
I
that's
mean, I
kind
know
of
we have
part
a
of the
lengthy parks
G.
plan document, but yeah, I don't remember because we went through that process. I think it was 6 or 7 years ago now, and I don't remember them identifying new areas. But that's because, like you said earlier, they're like we're kind of like within a constraint. We don't have a lot of build out left, so unless something comes up in the ETJ, but it's hard to dictate where the park should go in an ETJ. You probably put them along a floodplain, but it was kind of outside the scope of what we should put in our master plan, I guess. So
The Jeep section in the kind of speaks to that though, where at least let it pass by maybe the parks director or something, just to see if what they're planning makes sense with kind of the mission or goals that the Parks Department has. We put the Parks Board in there too, but I'm sure you could. I know if it's a lengthy process, you don't want to add another step, but
That's one thing
you
I
could
underlined.
strike it, I'm
Not
sure.
to bring it up. Just trying to set up, because it's important to have part of the development process to review and ensure compliance with this. But if our city staff can do it on a daily basis, I think it's more efficient than a monthly or bi-monthly Parks Board meeting is required by it.
Yeah.
okay.
I think if the Parks Board is keeping up with the master planning stuff, then I think the director can implement it.
Any other questions, concerns, comments?
Mr. Fuentes, you have
The Parkland Fund, the FALO, it will go into the Parkland Fund and not general.
That's correct, yes, and that's required. I think that's a state requirement. So yeah, and then those fees can only be used for parkland, either acquiring parkland or for maintenance of a parkland that you already have.
What was the verbiage I saw for capital? Where did I see that at?
Let's see right here.
I
It
think
says
that was
fee in lieu of usage references to CIP projects should be updated to capital projects to allow for broader applicability of collected funds.
Capital projects for the park.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah. That's it.
you guys.
I don't have any.
Troy, you have any?
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
I had a few more. One thing that I didn't notice in the dedication calculation was if a park is to be dedicated to the city, it doesn't outline like a minimum size. At least I didn't catch on to one. Is that something that should be addressed? Like, I assume by the 5%, just read the language, assuming 5% of a 5-acre tract defaults to FILO. And it's like, okay, maybe a quarter acre is the smallest the city wants to own and maintain, but I didn't see it spelled out in this document.
Well, I think
it was in our version, but not this one.
it was right because I remember us going through that a little bit.
I don't think it made that bit.
That cut, that legal probably was
Yeah.
like, you can't do that or something. So,
So I agree with Adriana's comment in that a whole bunch of small slivers of parks don't necessarily benefit the
I
community.
worry about that the quarter-acre lot size. I talked to staff. They're like, yeah, we can do it. But I know at some point, if you got like a bunch of those, it's probably easier to take care of one large parcel. So I don't know. We could tweak the minimum.
And then the other thing that I had was looking at, when you look at Alsatian Oaks and Flat Creek also as examples of PUD style developments, they wouldn't fall under this. But if we want the same trails and amenities, those Alsatian Oaks, as an example, has a mixture of public accessible improvements as well as private. So the amenity center, that's owned and maintained by the HOA. Those homeowners pay a monthly fee to keep it up. So they're not going to want the general public to be able to access it. Those typically have key card access and it's controlled by the members. Now, if you got a buddy, you can get in and, all those kinds of things. But they typically serve the HOA other than special events. But the linear trail systems and the things that are the dog parks or whatever.
the open pocket parks.
Those are kind of more open for the general public, and any of us could run over there and run the trail and run home. And so, thinking of incentivizing, they're going to want those amenity centers for the developments. A lot of them are, but if they're wanting to do, the private thing, can we incentivize more mixture stuff through this? Because the verbiage to me reads a lot like, you shall build it, improve it, and dedicate it to the city. I see a lot of dedication to the city requirements. And maybe I'm just misreading it, but not a whole lot of, it's okay to be owned and maintained by the HOA.
Yeah, and so on section D, it does say just ownership and maintenance. I do believe that if it's a large scale project like Alsatian Oaks or Flat Creek, and I'm just going to keep using them, but
Yeah.
even Westheimer Village, they all have an HOA. So most of the time, but I think that's also something that can be determined at the time if they're going to go through that development agreement, which most of them are going to, because now they have to, it's an annexation thing at this point. But for, let's say, Westheimer, I don't know, most of these new subdivisions that are coming on, they're just doing HOA. And I don't think the city is going to deter from that, because then at least they're maintaining their own things. So, but I see what you're saying, that maybe we could strengthen the language where it doesn't sound like we're requiring them to dedicate parkland directly to us. But it does say that the ownership and maintenance, just in section D, that it either can be dedicated to the city or it can be through HOA, but that's all subject for approval by the city. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And the thought behind that comment was a trail as an example. If that's owned and maintained by an HOA but open to the public, that's something I think the HOA will do a better job of keeping up with as opposed to city staff as we grow.
yeah.
I feel like our Parks Department has a lot on their plate. If we can get money for improvements and nice large parking improvements as opposed to a bunch of different small things to maintain,
Yeah.
I think we'd be benefiting them.
So you're saying, so maybe I misheard or misunderstood your question. So you're saying that in this document, you think maybe it's beneficial to say that if you are going to use an HOA, there's an incentivization of it.
I think that's a tool we could look to implement. And the comment more specifically was, for example, on dedication thresholds for number 2. For over 200 acres, says the developer must dedicate 5% of the gross site area and construct amenities. So I was reading that the dedication standpoint of they have to give that to the city.
Got it.
I don't know if that's an intent, but
Yeah,
things like that through the document.
it was supposed to be kind of even, because if you're doing the philo and you're asking for that higher price, then the parkland dedication should kind of include both land and amenities. But I was trying to keep it even to keep it justified. I don't know. We can change it.
I see what you're saying, though, but maybe that the language shouldn't be must dedicate, that maybe it should be canned or something more if they want to, because you're right, the city may not always want to take ownership of that park because we don't have the resources and the money to be able to keep up with the maintenance of that park. So instead of making it a must, making it may possibly,
maybe
as
far as if they want to take it on.
Exactly, subject to city approval, may dedicate 5% or something like that.
The example that I'll use is City of San Antonio development along the Leon Creek watershed.
Mm-hmm.
Early on in my career, when we were doing that, the City Parks Department of San Antonio wanted more land. So at developments, as parks requirements, they would have to dedicate it.
Yeah.
It reached a point where they said, hey, we have too much to maintain. We want you to build the facilities, but own and maintain them.
Got it.
And so it has transitioned over time where the city does not want more parkland everywhere. They want to go after select locations and then still have the facilities built.
Got it. Okay. I see. Do you understand that, Adriana?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to.
So that would be kind of subject to someone trying, the city saying, oh, y'all take it over instead of us actually getting that whole dedication.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the developers will default to owning it and having the HOA own it and maintain it, unless they're told they have to dedicate it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because they, just like Alsatian Oaks and Flat Creek, I mean, their homes are at a certain price point because they want it to be a nice neighborhood. And in order to maintain that nice neighborhood, if they're relying on the city to do the upkeep on that, our upkeep could look differently from their upkeep. And so then there could be clashing. So
You just probably want to specify something that, like you're saying, where part of it can be just HOA accessible and the other part, or, the neighbors actually use it, and then the other part can be open to, because that's what you're kind of playing with. Is it actually like a fully accessible park to anybody in the city or not? So you want to probably specify.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
You almost have to specify a certain portion of it needs to be to the public.
Yeah.
Because as you were saying, as an HOA, if I was paying for this park, I mean, I would want just the residents to use it as an owner.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you would almost have to dedicate a certain portion of it to the public versus just the residents.
That's
And
a
not
fine.
necessarily-
I can tell you, it's a fine line to run because having dealt with the civil disturbances that were caused when somebody showed up at an HOA park and they were like, "You don't belong here. You need to leave." And then, of course, as a police officer, you got to go up there and try and figure out, okay,
Show me
what's
your
what.
address.
Yeah.
And so I can almost assure you that, when you try and dovetail those two things together, private versus public,
Yeah.
there will be some problems. Now, it's not that you can't navigate them. I would say, obviously, there's going to have to be something up front posted and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Making it clear that it can be dual use.
Yeah.
Like Jim said, you're probably going to have areas where, if you got the pass key, you got a card, you can get in it.
Yeah.
But, if you don't have that, then you're not, you can't get in. But if it's an open area, open space area, you could probably make the assumption that it's accessible to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, and maybe that's where the line is at. If it's closed, private, locked, gated, then that's the private side of it, and then trails, parks that have no gates, stuff like that. That means it's open to the public.
And
I don't know, but that's hard for staff to be able
Yeah,
to.
I think the current industry navigates that pretty well with the key code or access
Yes.
and usually it's your high dollar improvements, your pool, your amenity center that you can have events at. Maybe it's a pickleball court, but I mean those usually open. So there's I think a clear delineation between tiers of improvements, and that leads into my next thing on question or comment on the development over 200 acres as an example. It mentions and construct recreational amenities. It gives an example, but it's not extremely clear on the level of amenitizing or what is required. And so a thought is maybe we adjust that to offer incentives for more amenities. So maybe it's a base acreage calculation, and then you get so many acres of credit for picnic tables or for a covered shade canopy or for a dog park or something like that at the end of the day, they may be able to use less acreage out of their development, but have higher amenities, a higher level of amenities on that acreage to achieve a different product,
Have you seen that anywhere before with cities that you've worked with?
Yes, San Antonio has it.
Did they?
I think I've seen it elsewhere, but I couldn't quote
I've seen that
exactly.
around too. Yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Mhm.
Okay. Just because so we could take a look at that and we can see what that looks like.
Maybe New Braunfels too.
I feel
Theirs
I
is
feel like
really
New
theirs is
Braunfels
really
is-
detailed.
Yeah, it'd be hard to get to their level from where we're at now.
Well, that's
but
that's
still,
what I was trying to walk that line of really how much more words do you want to add to this? Because right now it's on one page.
Yeah.
And just to try to get it going, because it'd be
To speak to your comment, that's kind of what I was looking at when I read this. Since we're developing a document, it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles to begin with. A good entry is what we're looking for. So, I agree with everything Jim just said. As we move along and experience more development and more interaction with developers, obviously we'll get a pretty good handle. So, if our task tonight is to at least move a base document on to council, you have far more experience. Jim has far more experience than I do, certainly in this thing. But as a base document, I would say you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good change and one that was definitely needed. For the parks ordinance. Another note. Sorry that I've got all these notes, but
No,
these
you're
thoughts
fine.
that came.
No, that's what we're here for.
This doesn't speak to. Do we allow a partial FILO and parks dedication? Can you do it?
I think that would be up to, so right now, any FILO fee has to be approved by city council. So if they wanted to do that, I think that's something that could be worked out at that point, but I don't know if it specifically says that's not allowed. So, does it? I don't know.
I didn't see any. That
No.
it's
Yeah, the city
disallowed.
may require, the cities may require or allow FILO if the development is under 5 acres or if the land offered does not meet the
Yeah, no,
city standards.
basically.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to offer that flexibility, I think we could just change the verbiage to read that, or a combination of,
Yeah, under
FILO
5
definitions.
acres or a combination.
something to say, hey, you can do both.
Yeah.
And the thought behind that is, each property is different. Maybe one has a particular area that is awesome for a park, but it doesn't meet the full requirement.
Mhm.
Maybe they can do that, provide amenities, additional amenities to increase the credits, or pay a FILO for the delta.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if I can or cannot say this.
That's up to
Yes,
Jen.
please.
Yeah.
Now I know I need to ask permission. Let me speak.
Yes,
No, when I look at the structure of the ordinance, or the framework of it, I know it's titled Parkland Dedication, but kind of just based off the conversation today, would it make more sense, as to rename it as far as Parkland Designation instead of dedication, because we don't know as far as HOA versus the city, and or include a paragraph that's transfer of access, so use of that park, whether it's HOA owned or a city owned or anything like that, just recommendation for that.
Yeah. I think thank you for bringing, because you're right. When you read this parkland dedication, when that's the ordinance, you'd think that all of this is about is parkland dedication to the city, but wouldn't, in fact, it's not always about dedication. That may be just an HOA. So maybe that the terminology would
That's a
be
good
better.
point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. That's what we're all here for.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. All right.
And there may be cases, thinking through that dedication
Mhm.
Optics, that if they're in the ETJ and it's not a development agreement to annex, it may be an isolated island of a park, and I don't know that you can the city own something not inside the city limits like that? Or would it have to be annexed into the city?
I think it would have to be annexed into the city. So in that case, it would have to be HOA maintained, because it would, in order for the city to take it on, it would have to be annexed in. We don't do anything we don't maintain anything outside of our city limits. So, but since it's in our ETJ, it goes through our subdivision ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they would have to, if they don't annex, it'd have to
That's
stay
correct, yes.
HOA.
Mhm.
On the second page, towards the end, the elderly communities no longer being exempt. I just wanted to talk about it, but I think we've covered it. If it's an HOA owned parkland area, it's okay. I think that's good. But like a Del Webb type, highly amenitized, age restricted community is going to come in with more than enough parkland, but it's all going to be private. It's going to be gated, and it's going to serve their residents. So I just want to make sure we're not creating anything that conflicts with that. But I think this discussion
Has squashed that.
cleared that, yeah.
Yes. Mhm.
Really, the rest are, I think, more clarification. When you get into F on criteria for FILO, second line talks about if the land offered does not meet city standards. And I underline that. What
is
if I had to look for the definition of city standards of a park, what would that be?
Yeah.
Just a
Subjective.
Yeah,
Subjective.
Yeah.
not to add 10 pages to this document, but
Yeah.
trying to offer comments and questions that people may have.
Well, one thing, so I'll give you a little insight. So when Adriana brought this to me, because what I expressed to her how we have the parkland dedication and then we have the open space, because I first remember you're trying to tackle both. And I said, hey, let's try and keep it to one thing at a time, because when you get involved in too many things with so much language that's parkland, open space, and you may get a little off the beaten path. So maybe one thing that I didn't bring up to her, but that we can do in the subdivision ordinance is there is a definition section.
Just add in there.
We didn't tackle that in this part, but if there's things like that we feel like we need to expand on but don't want to read it aloud in this ordinance where it's specifically spelled out, then we can always throw that into the definition in the definition part. So that may be a good instance to do that.
Take the time to offer these comments because we run into that quite often with ordinances that are loosely worded, and then you get different staff that comes in at a city or county or wherever, and they interpret it differently, and that changes the whole game. So, just trying to think through those scenarios.
Got it.
I can understand now why stuff is so detailed. That way, you can keep the right standard depending on who's staff or who's in council and stuff like that. So.
There's a fine line. You want to be as detailed so when you read it, there's not so many question marks, but you can't be so detailed to try and account for every situation that's going to happen because that's impossible. That's when the ordinance gets too hard to read. So you have to find that fine line in between. And I think that's why pulling some of those definitions out or if there's questions about what this means, then we can put that in the definition section so it's not actually mudding up the terminology of the ordinance.
Okay. I have exhausted my list of questions.
Are you sure?
And everybody else, I'm sure.
I learned a couple of things. So.
I think this is a great step forward. I'm excited with the Parks Department and all the good things that are happening. I think it's good for the city. Looking forward. Okay, so we've talked through it thoroughly. What are our next steps on this document? Does it need to go back to Parks Board to hear the comments and then back to us? Does it go up to council to get their input? What direction should we head?
I think that the next step should be to bring it back to the park. Since there were so many comments, let's go ahead and I'll help you itemize them so you know all the comments that we heard tonight. So the Parks Board can think about it. They could even listen to this meeting if they want to. It'll be posted online before we move forward. And at that point, it'll still come back to y'all, planning and zoning for y'all's recommendation. And I hope at that point, we could at least come to a consensus to be able to move forward to city council. Okay. And then they can make that final determination. So, but I think that's probably the best path forward since there were quite a bit of comments and discussion here. So y'all can have that discussion amongst y'allself to see what's the best path forward for this ordinance.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
I think so.
Okay.
I know I don't think many people, this was my first attempt at anything with ordinance, so it's been a learning experience, so we can see. I don't want to slow down the process either, because I feel like the faster we can get this, ratified or whatever, passed through council, the better, because you never know when that next developer is going to come.
That's true.
And I don't want that fee to be so tiny, for example.
We can all pretty much be assured it'll be sooner than later.
Yeah. Hey, if somebody calls me, I'm going to say, okay, no, we have to, sorry, I'm busy for the next 4 months.
We don't have any water right now.
We don't have any water right now, so you're just going to have to wait 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
No. So we'll try and get that at the next Parks Board meeting, unless that's next week. No.
Yeah,
and then
it'd be cool if we could do it for the June one.
Okay, sounds good. And then we'll bring it back hopefully right after that to planning and zoning. Okay. All right, sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Do you need a motion on that? Or?
No, I don't think so. I think no action's good, just because we'll see when it comes back to planning and zoning.
Just discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
All right.
All right, so we'll move on to item C, discussion and appropriate action on a proposed amendment to the CZO, including revisions to table of contents, amendments to Article 1, general provisions, Section 8, general definitions, to add a definition for temporary storage containers, and the addition of Article 1, Section 21, establishing regulations for temporary storage containers.
Yep. Okay, so this is the fourth time y'all have seen this, at least. Okay, so last time that the temporary storage containers came before planning and zoning, the concern was commercial. The fact that there's already temporary storage containers that are located, I believe y'all said behind Davies, and probably elsewhere throughout the city, but you just don't see them because they're behind the buildings and things like that. And that the ordinance kind of made it hard for them to even be there, even though they've been existing for maybe longer than some of us have been alive. No. So my goal was to try and bring back an ordinance that had the regulations that we wanted for residential, but to minimize the regulations for commercial. So we're not hitting those barriers again. Okay. So sorry, I'm just still flipping through all of the paperwork because I don't have it in front. Okay, here it is. Okay, so the proposed changes. Sorry, guys. Okay, so now it does break it out. So before it kind of broke out residential and commercial, but then there was still some elements that were intertwined. So now it pretty much completely breaks those two out, because that was the best way to handle it. Instead of trying to do a lot of exceptions for commercial or exceptions for this or exceptions for that, it broke it out into two: residential and commercial properties. So for the duration limits, we still maintain those time limits that we had already established at the last few meetings for residential properties, and the duration limits for commercial properties was completely removed because, like we said, those connexes or those temporary storage containers have been out there for a long time, and we don't want to impose something that hasn't been an issue at this point. Now, just remember that moving forward, if it does become an issue, y'all can always come back and look at an ordinance again. So if it hasn't been an issue, y'all are not offended by what y'all see out there, then I would say leave it as is, let them live, and let's move on, So, okay, so the location standards, it does regulate where the containers may be placed on the property, but after hearing kind of where those locations are, most of them are located in the rear of those properties, which I think we want to maintain. That's just because you don't want a whole bunch of connexes in front of a business unless they're doing work and it's for really temporary storage. And that's when we do have some limitations where it can be used on a commercial property. It can be in the parking lot. Jim, I think we discussed this last time, where it can be used in the parking lot as long as the business is not in operation, because there's people that need it as they're remodeling their businesses and things like that.
Yep.
And so other things, maintenance and use standards. So the temporary storage containers shall be maintained in good condition. I think that's a good one to have in there. Just, I know it's a bit subjective, but hopefully, and I think actually in the ordinance, it gives you better language to that, like not rusting, no graffiti, and things of that sort. And then prohibits use as a habitable space, because we don't want people living in these. These are only for storage, because people will try. And then permit requirements, retains the permit requirements for residential properties, and then completely removes the permit requirements for commercial properties. So that's pretty much all I have for this, right? Yes. So any thoughts, questions? I don't know what happened right here. There we go. Yeah, okay. I'm open to that. But I think I heard y'all's comments last time, and I tried to implement them the best that I could in the updated ordinance. Okay.
All right. Any comments, questions?
No, I do not.
I did not.
Same here. I was good with it.
Good job.
Yeah.
Are we moving something to council?
Was that a motion?
No, I can't. I'm not allowed to.
So if there's no comments, questions, I'd entertain the motion.
I move to recommend approval of the proposed amendments to the comprehensive zoning ordinance as presented.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Not. Take a vote. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Yes, we are moving something on the council.
Yay! So excited.
All right. Seats taken care of. On to item D. Discussion. This will be a short one. Discussion regarding Planning and Zoning Commission meeting attendance expectations and procedures for notifying staff when unable to attend meeting.
Yes. So I'll go ahead and get into this.
Yeah.
So we ran into the issue, and I really do understand, guys, that it's hard. There's conflicts and things, which is fine, and we're good with that. But last time we planned the meeting, and then there was a few people here, but then we couldn't meet quorum, and so whenever I would just ask that if you can't make a meeting, just let me know. And I know sometimes people email Deborah, But if you could let me know, because sometimes that message doesn't get down to me, so I don't hear it until maybe in passing or something like that. So if you could just let me know, and as soon as possible, because now if we're going to have special called meetings, we have to have all 4 of y'all present. We don't have our 5th person, and we do not have any alternatives at this point, or alternates.
Yeah.
Let me know as soon as you can in advance. And then if for some reason that same day you're not able to make it, just same thing, a good notification. And so I would just ask that moving forward, I always typically send out the agenda or send out an email kind of like as a reminder, or hey, we're going to be looking at this, please review this. If you can't make it, just respond to that email just so I know. And then and respond also if you can make it. So I'm saying, oh yeah, someone told me that they can be here. So-and-so said yes, so-and-so said no. So let's just try and so I can know there's going to be a quorum for the meeting.
And I apologize for that. I did respond to Deborah. I did not send it to you.
It's okay. It's fine. That's why we're going
Yeah.
over it now, because I've never really clarified that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
Agreed.
I'm the one who, I mean, I know Deborah posts the agendas, but I'm really the one who does all the background stuff. And so, and we don't work in the same office. So sometimes I see her and sometimes I don't. So yeah. And then I also spoke with Deborah and just said, hey, if somebody emails you, just please let me know. So we're trying to cover it on all bases.
Mm-hmm.
And then just know that if you have 3 unexcused absences, it is up to city council whether they do want to remove you from planning and zoning. I know we don't have a lot of options right now, but if there's ever an instance where they feel like, okay, 3 unexcused absences is just too many, then they always have that option. So I just wanted to let y'all know that. Okay.
So is it unexcused or 3 consecutive?
I think it's 3 unexcused. Here, I put the language in here. Any member of the Planning and Zoning Commission who does not attend 3 consecutive meetings without good cause for absences may be replaced for the remainder of his or her term after being sent proper notice. So it's consecutive and unexcused. Yeah. Okay. All right. Just Jim, you have anything to add to that?
No, you hit it all, and I asked that we discuss it because it is something that we've been haven't really had a standard protocol for, and it came to light when we weren't able to have our last meeting, and we've got to do what we can to make sure that the process keeps going forward, because there's very important stuff that comes in front of us, and if we're unable to meet, that delays it by a month or until we can have a special called meeting. So.
Yeah. And then on top of it, just kind of piggybacking off of that, if there's a reason that you can't make it at 6:30, when your kids have a game, grandkids has a birthday party, whatever that is, just let me know, and we'll always try and schedule. If we need to do like tonight a special called meeting, we can always throw that out there, so that's no problem. If you do have something else scheduled, just let me know in advance, and we'll try and make it where we can get everybody here. So yeah.
And I think we need to work on a finder's fee for another commissioner and 2 alternates.
Seriously.
We need to fill those spots.
I know. So if anybody listening, if y'all know of anybody who wants to, I know the one person watching, please try and get people, because we still need 1 to fill 1 position and then 2 alternate positions. So, all right. So that's all I had for that one.
Thank you, Brianna. Move on to item E. Discussion and possible action to review the draft City Council Active Transportation Plan.
Okay, so the active transportation plan. So I'm just going to give a little background here. So a couple years, I guess it was a couple or 3 years ago at this point, the city of Castroville went to TechStop for a grant to get a bridge installed and cross from between Steinbach House and Landmark Inn. TechStop said they loved the proposal and they loved the project that we were trying to do, but the thing is that they weren't comfortable with is that we didn't have a transportation plan. And so they said, well, instead of giving you that grant, we're going to give you a grant for doing an active transportation plan. So any projects that y'all have in the future coming up that requires sidewalks, just safety for pedestrians, then y'all can put in for those. And then at least we know that you already have this on the book. So this was a TxDOT funded transportation plan. Okay. So here we are. We went through this project. It's been ongoing since fall of 2025. So it's been a long time, but I've seen other plans that have taken a lot longer. So we've been checking through it, which is great. And so really fall was just doing some stakeholder outreach, trying to get people on our stakeholder board. So I'll kind of go into that a little bit. Our stakeholder board consisted of someone from the school district, a local business owner. We tried the Parks and Rec Board, our Planning and Zoning Commission, our HLC. Let's see, one of the city council members, and I think that was it. I think there was, and then of course myself, and then the person from Tool Design, who's the person that TxDOT gave us, the firm that TxDOT provided to do this project with us. So it was a pretty good stakeholder committee, and so that was all ran through city council, and we were able to get those positions approved, and so that's who was in those. And then throughout winter 2025, 2026, we started working on public engagement. So we went to National Night Out, which was great. It was awesome being out there. We got to talk to a lot of people in the community. We went to Boo Bash with all the little kids. That was pretty awesome. We also did a public engagement, which was more recently here at the Magnolia Filling Station, where we sat out there, and as people were coming to get their coffee, we kind of just chatted with them. And we have, every time we have the poster boards, interactive things, trying to get as much feedback as we possibly can. And we had 2 here in city council, but that wasn't a good turnout. People like to be doing things when they see us. So, yeah. So, we tried to get as much feedback as we possibly could over the past 6 months. So after we got all that feedback, we went back, we even took it to the stakeholder committee, and ran all of the recommendations that we got from the public through them, just to get clarification if that's what they saw, the vision for the plan. The stakeholder group also walked the city of Castroville, which was pretty interesting to see how people drive, and the lack of connectivity and the lack of safety for pedestrians sometimes. So we did that walk throughout Castroville, which was great. And then it gave us a lot of information. And then Tool Design drafted this active transportation plan for the city. And that's where we're at now. Okay. Okay, so throughout this process, we did bring the vision and goals to the city council first, because we wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page prior to starting this project. We didn't want the firm to be way over here. This is what we think should be happening with the city, but city council had a different vision. So the 3 top goals for the city was to increase safety, increase connectivity and access, and community. So just to make sure that when people are walking or bicycling or and scootering around town, that they feel safe when they're doing it. Connectivity and access. I know we have limited what we can do on Highway 90, but there's still some things the city can implement to hopefully increase that. And then because this is a TxDOT funded plan, then when they're doing their projects moving forward, then we can say, hey, y'all funded this plan. And we also had somebody from TxDOT in our stakeholder committee too. Hey, we ran this through y'all. And this is what we got from y'all, basically. And so y'all should make sure you're implementing this when you're doing maintenance or when you're reconstructing Highway 90. So, and community, just develop a plan that incorporates and is responsive to the current and future needs of Castroville. So, engagement summary. So this is something, this is just an example of what we did. So at the National Night Out, we had a big map and we gave people sticky dots, and the green was to say, hey, I like what's happening here. The red is like, we need to work on this area. And then yellow, and we had quite a few people. And then we also had them write out stories of maybe things that have happened at those intersections where they thought why it was bad or why they thought it needed improvement. And man, people have a lot to say about it. So, and so we did this mapping exercise, and as you can see, we got quite a bit of feedback, and they would explain to us why they thought what they did. And so that was pretty cool. The survey findings. So for ranking of walking improvements, the number 1 was more sidewalks. I know that downtown Castroville, or the inside the horseshoe, is not sidewalk friendly. Like, we know where that's at, but there are places around town that could implement better strategic sidewalks. And that doesn't always mean concrete on the ground. There's other ways, and the plan kind of goes into what that can look like. And then ranking of bicycle improvements, just safer streets for biking was number 1. And then ranking of trail improvements, just trail with amenities, that was number one. And then ranking of transportation priorities, and the number one was safe walking and biking for all ages and abilities. So that's just some things, when we did the survey, those are some things that we found out. This is us doing our stakeholder walk. Look at Jim's right there. Yeah. Yeah. And
Like that.
that was pretty cool. We started here at City Hall. We walked over to Houston Square, and then we walked down to Castroville Elementary. We walked across Highway 90, if you can believe it. That didn't feel great. And then kind of went back in front of the library, and then all the way down to Florence, right? And then came across in front of Magnolia. Was that right? Now I'm kind of forgetting a little bit. But so we kind of just did a big, nice loop, but we wanted to cross Highway 90 because we wanted to get that feel for what it feels like when families are walking across, or just residents are walking across trying to get from one place to the other. Like I said, not great. So
I know one of the comments made on Facebook last night was, the game Frogger.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
One of the citizens said, "Yeah, I hate playing a game of Frogger every time I have to cross Highway 90."
Yeah.
And it's true.
It's true, yeah. And like I said, I know a lot of that is text dot right away, and there's only a limited amount, but I think there's also some improvements the city can make. These are not saying these improvements are going to happen right now. This is a plan for the future. So if this community decides they want to make improvements of that nature, they have a plan to turn to see what came out from the community. And then policy and programmatic recommendations. So integrating and expanding active transportation. So bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. So these are just some things that they recommended that if we do want to expand on active transportation, things that we can do in this city to do that on a very small scale. So if we wanted to create our own advisory committee, and that could even be a subcommittee of maybe the Historic Landmark Commission or Planning and Zoning or something like that. So if there's projects that are coming about, we already have an advisory committee for things like that. Demonstration projects. So a lot of this is chalk and paint. So if you think that there needs to be a sidewalk right here, you chalk it out first, you paint it out first, and you see how that works. Because even though it's just paint, and even though there's no concrete barrier right there, people watch that and they pay attention for so long until they realize, okay, I can just drive over this. But it does they say that it does work in other communities just to put that visualization on the ground, and people will utilize it. And so that's why even a lot of rural communities, you'll just see like the yellow dotted line on the side. That's the bike lane or the shared use path. And it's because people will tend to drive on this side and then people walk or bike on this side. So, and then it just benefits all road users. And not only does it benefit the pedestrians walking, but it also benefits all the cars, because then you know where those pedestrians are going to be. So you don't have to worry so much as you're driving around. So. All right, so safety. So traffic, the one thing for safety is definitely traffic calming. So I think a lot of people, it's gotten better since the stop sign was installed right here.
Yeah,
but
noticed that this evening.
Yeah, but before, if you would just stand here, you would see people zoom in all the way down. I mean, there's a dance studio right there. There's a coffee shop, there's shops, there's a church. And I mean, you see people, I swear they're going like 45 miles an hour down Fiorella. Like I said, it got a little better with that stop sign being implemented, which is a traffic calming measure. So, but there's other places around town that something like that could probably be installed. And it doesn't always have to be a stop sign. It could be a pedestrian walk table where they have to go kind of up that hump, but it's enough where you can put one of those where this is a pedestrian walk path with the little lines saying that pedestrians cross here, and then they have to go down that hump just to make people slow down. Like I said, these are just recommendations to maybe get people to slow down a little bit throughout the city. Safe routes to school. National Night Out, that was one of the big things, is there is a lot of families there, and they say, yeah, we live in the neighborhood, or we live right across Highway 90, but we still have to drive our kids to school because we feel like even though it's a quarter of a mile away, we can't walk them without getting hit or being worried. And they're like, and it's not even just on Highway 90. It's like some of these streets just right here walking to the elementary, which is kind of scary. The biggest one, Houston Square. And I'm not going to drag on it too much, but they say you don't know where the cars are coming from. You don't know where you're supposed to be walking. You don't know where the cars are supposed to be going because there's very limited pedestrian where the pedestrian should go and where a vehicle should go. And so that's been a big one. Connectivity and access. So access management. I do think this is one thing the city eventually is going to have to do. We have just too many points that come onto Highway 90 to shut some of those points down. When you have cars coming from all directions, it's just never going to be safe for pedestrians, especially along Highway 90 that are maybe just walking or biking right there. You need to minimize those access points. Like I said, it doesn't always have to be concrete barriers or things like that. It can be where you're painting it out, saying like no entrance, no exit, and then you turn that into maybe some parking because, you know, here downtown, we're limited on the amount of parking that we have. And so maybe that's a way to increase the parking and then also limit access to increase the safety. So you'll kind of see a plan here in just a minute. And then community, that's integrating walking and biking, education camps. One thing that they do over in, maybe it's New Braunfels, is they do every month or not every month, every year they just do all the families walk and bike to the local school. Just so you can see how many families there actually are, so people can see each other walking. I mean, it turns into a pretty big event once you instill those in the communities. So that's just something to look into. Okay, the network plan. So this is a plan that was recommended by, I would say, staff and tool design. As you can see, there's a lot going on, but one thing is everything is supposed to have a connection. It's never supposed to really dead end. Of course, if you look at 471 South, that goes all the way down. It's outside of our city limits, so we're not going to keep that going. But everywhere else has a loop, and and we want that. You should always be able to get to one place multiple ways, especially if you're walking and biking. One thing that we utilized on here is that BMA trail, as you can see on the west side of town. We're working through the BMA people right now to make sure that we're able to utilize, and that goes all the way down to the regional park. So that's one thing. Another thing that it shows on here is that purple line that's way, I don't have my pointer on. Let me see. This purple line up here, that's hopefully in the future, the thoroughfare that's going to be another connection to from Highway 90 over to 471 without having to pass right there in front of Bill Miller's. So we want to put that on the map. Will it look exactly like this? Probably not, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with these landowners to the west of Alsatian Oaks. But we want to still put it on there, so whenever they come to the table, we can say, hey, we've had this on our plan because we want that connection here. And yes, this is active transportation for walking and biking, but when you think about sidewalks, typically they're on the side of those roadways. So another thing that we looked at is so eventually this property right here is going to be developed. We don't know when, we don't know by who, but we do know that eventually it will be developed. And so creating that connection from over here by the airport all the way to the back of Lower Lacoste, like I said, it's just another loop. And that's just saying, and if you do a side path, which is not just a sidewalk, it can be a shared use path. It could be a lot of different things. Then you make that connection between those two. Let's see. Trying to think. And then right here, all around just the Lions Park, the Castroville Elementary School is probably doing some kind of sidewalks. Only, like I said, for those families that are trying to get right there, there is a lot of car traffic, especially in the mornings when people are doing drop off, in the afternoons when people are doing pickup, that if you put some sidewalks in, then it would be a lot safer for those residents. Just off the top of, just after looking at this, is there anything that comes to mind? Are y'all good so far?
I was kind of curious as to why they weren't kind of mimicking what San Antonio had done along the actual river, down next to the riverbed, as far as sidewalks, biking trails, that kind of stuff. I know it's connected still up by the streets, mm-hmm. but I mean, if you went along the river bed area, especially underneath the bridge, yeah. I mean, that would be the absolute safest place to cross Highway 90 that the entire city would have. was it just because there's too many entities involved in trying to do that, or?
Well, yeah, it's all private. Every single frontage, except for the paper streets. There you go. They're all privately owned, and so we would have to get approval from all that privately owned, because even as the river comes down, your property goes from wherever that river edge is. So if it's dry, it goes all the way to the center of that riverbed.
And
Yeah.
even under the bridge, it's owned by the Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, yeah, it's not. That's
one of the weirdest properties. But
Yeah.
Yes, they own completely all the way over to the Landmark Inn.
Yep.
Dang.
Yeah, I know, it's wild. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
it's-
completely privately owned, except for right where Landmark Inn is and Steinbach House. I think everything else is privately owned in that horseshoe.
Well, I knew back in the day they cut the lots in especially so everyone would have a piece of the water.
Yeah.
I mean,
So that's why a lot of people do, like, maybe hindsight's 2020. I mean, I don't know, because I know this is a very private community, so I don't know if people would really be on board with people walking in their, like, close to their backyard. That's just a community preference.
I already heard you.
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
Totally
Yeah.
agree.
It's also a community preference.
But the
So
paper streets are a great opportunity
yeah.
for little pocket parks.
Yeah, down at the bottom. Yeah, but it's kind of the same thing though, because really it's only that paper street. So you think it's maybe 12 feet wide, 18 feet wide, 24 feet wide, and then it's private property. So there's only so much you can do because it's only the width of that right away. So yeah, but
15 vada.
Huh?
15 vada, 45 feet.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, you're looking at a real tight park there.
in
So-
going through the plan, at least looking through the document that you'd sent along,
Mhm.
have they set up a priority as far as I know there was a prioritization chapter in there,
Mhm.
but since it seems as though most of the problems are on Highway 90 or along Highway 90, is that going to be like the primary focus as far as time, effort, staff time, and
So this is just a plan. So this doesn't mean, like I said, this is not saying anything's moving forward. Everything costs something. There's
Yeah.
nothing's done for free.
You're past the hat.
So yeah.
yeah,
So like I said, it's yes, if there's ever an opportunity where we know that TxDOT is doing some kind of revitalization right here in front of September Square, are we going to want to be involved and try and get what we want out of that? For sure. And that, yes, that would be a priority on staff based off this plan. We actually have like a little intersection here. And let me keep going. This is just a zoomed in part of like downtown historic Castroville. Prioritization. Okay. Yeah. So if there's ever a project that we know we can do, of course that would be the highest priority. So if that means we come into some funds for doing some stripes or painting some sidewalks along whichever street is dictated by the community, then yes, that will be the highest priority. Now, if we get an opportunity where TxDOT's doing some major renovations on Highway 90, then that our focus would shift over to that based off what this plan says. So it would definitely be on where those funds land and what's going on at that point. So
Okay.
yeah. Okay, so of course, a prioritization. The first is safety. That was across the board. And the second one was connectivity and access. The third one was community. Engagement activities identified by residents. Feasibility and cost. So this is where those just temporary things came in. It was that a lot of people were like, yeah, I would like to see how that would play out before we put a permanent sidewalk. I would love to see Houston Square. I would love to see how it would be marked before we did something permanent there and see how that looks and see how it feels. And so there was a lot of people that actually brought that to our attention and was like, we want to see it, but we don't want to pay a lot for it to begin with. Like maybe in the future, if it's working out, then we can put some more permanent structures there. But as of right now, we just want to be able to see it. And that's where that came into play. And then opportunity for demonstration, that's the same thing, just low-cost pilot implementations. So, and then phasing frameworks, so short term, 0 to 5 years, so quick wins. That's the low-cost improvements, safety project pilots. It says Highway 90. I need to clarify what Highway 90 is because that's definitely not low cost. And then high priority school connections, because I think that's where we saw probably the most red dots other than Highway 90 is right there around the elementary schools. Mm-hmm. And then 5 to 10 years term, so interim upgrades that formalize successful demonstrations. So they're just saying if something were to work around here, then maybe we could allocate money to make those more permanent. And then long term is permanent capital investment improvements to major reconstruction projects. So that would be something more like the bridge from Steinbach House to Landmark Inn. That's a permanent upgrade. That's going to be a significant amount of money. Of course, your staff is always going to go try and find grants and things of that sorts to get that to make that happen. But if not, if that's really a priority of this community, then put it on paper and then go try and get that in, let's just say 10 years, So you have to start with the base somewhere.
That's one thing that I didn't see in this plan was that bridge.
You're right. Well, I think it's just a connection between, it shows just an upgraded connection between Highway 90 or
the bridge improvements, like the existing Highway 90 improvements, but
it didn't specifically say the bridge.
Yeah,
You're right.
I don't know if it has to be on there to go after funding.
I think it just shows that we want connection there, but you know what? That's a good, I'll look into that. You're right. What is that? If it's not mentioned, I feel like it should at least be talked about. So, because that's how this all got started.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so these are just a demonstration to permanent approach. So the demonstration phase, as you can see, a lot of these things is just paint. They have these things where it's like vegetation almost. It looks like grass rolled into stuff, but and you can move that. So if you have a Fiorella Friday, but you need this parking for something, you can move it around. But somebody with a car is not going to necessarily just drive over that. And so there's different phases that they lay out in the plan, which are demonstration, interim, and then the permanent phases. Okay, so they did choose a couple of projects here in town, which are that they focused on. And I know we're not going to get into Houston Square. Trust me, we were like, we're leaving Houston Square B. We don't want to talk about the parking. This is for active transportation. This is for safety of pedestrians. This is not necessarily about parking. So we're getting away from that. And so what we came down to is that this is all through painted. We said, hey, we just want to show what it might look like if we decided to do this as a demonstration. Like I said, no permanent installation of anything. This is just to try and give people a feel or look of what maybe Houston Square could look like if you were to implement sidewalks or to do a more permanent solution there. So they sketched this out. They made sure like there's sidewalks on all four sides of the square, that there's the white line, to show where pedestrians can walk at all the intersections. And then hopefully what this would do is that as cars are coming and going, if you were to paint this on the ground, they would try and see that paint and go in that movement so people could see how that feels as they're walking around. So, but I mean, I think it'd be cool to see out there, just see, like I said, I know there's a lot of feelings around Houston Square, but this is not a permanent thing. This is something that you could do a demonstration of, at a pretty low cost. Of course, the highest cost is going to be doing the painting and then doing all the striping and stuff. But, just to see what that safety could look like around Houston Square, it might be something to think about. So this is another intersection that they looked at. So this is that red building that's right there at the top. That's Broadway Bank. So that's right there. Yeah, coming in. And so what they are recommending, and like I said, we don't have control over Highway 90, but if TxDOT were to come to us and say, hey, we're doing a project, what is y'all's input? This would be our input. This would be, hey, we actually already thought about this. This is what we think it needs to look like. We need a limit where traffic can go right now. That's a huge issue, is that you just don't know where cars are coming and going. You can't, there's no determination right now. Another recommendation they're making is have, a lot of people always think Alamo would be the one-way street, like going into Castroville. If they were to make out between Alamo and Fiorella one way, I would always think that it'd be Alamo going one way and then Fiorella coming out, but actually they're like, no, that doesn't make sense with the traffic patterns. You would want Fiorella going the one way in and Alamo going the one way out, because you want people to always come to a square. When they're coming out diagonally, that's when things get all mixed up. So you always want them coming out of on a squared section. And so that was something I never knew. So, and then what they were saying is maybe do some back-in parking right there at September Square. These are just all ideas. And then this is where they say limit. Another thing is when you're coming out of all these streets is that you should want them come to a right angle. Yeah. And right now you can just go out this way, you can go out this way. And so what they're saying is with paint, what you can do is limit where visually you need to come turn as you're coming down London. I believe that's Lafayette. There you go. Sorry. Yeah. As you're coming out, that you have to come to that right angle instead of just going straight out. So these are all just little improvements that you can make. And these are things that actually the city can do right here at these. We control our intersections. We control our streets that come out onto TxDOT. That's not their right of way. So these things maybe could be implemented by the city in the future if y'all see a need for that. So.
One thing I would like to see, because I think we missed an opportunity out where they're pouring the islands of concrete. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to put some sort of plantings in there. And here we're seeing the sea of concrete as well. Yeah. I think it would just soften the whole city if you were to
put some, some vegetation along. Yeah. And it also creates like that barrier, even though, it's not like you don't want to give a false sense of safety, but it does create that barrier when there's some plantings on the outside to where there's just where it's not just you and a car right next to each other. So. All right. And so this right here is at the intersection of, I don't have street. Oh yeah, it does have street. Okay, Constantinople. Yeah.
The infamous Constantinople.
Yeah, and going into your house is right there, right? Yeah. And going towards the elementary school to the north. So these are just it's that weird Paris Street connection that comes to those weird. So they would recommend like on this side just shutting that down. That there's right here just a few 100 feet that way is another exit out of that street section. So you don't even need to have that one right there. And then on the other side, on the south of Highway 90, is that same thing. Make this come to a right angle so cars aren't crossing right there at that weird angle. And then that in fact makes this crossing across Highway 90 safer. Of course, this is the only other lighted crosswalk that we have. So we have the one that's right here, the one that's at Bill Miller's at that intersection. And then on this side of town, that's the only other one that we have. And so, like I said, they want to put things that are not like pie in the sky into this plan, because of course, maybe is this the best interconnection? Is this the best place to do this? I don't think if you had a say and you had all the funds in the world, this is still the best connection to get to that school. They thought it actually would be one street down, but because the infrastructure is already there, this would be the most cost efficient. And maybe, like I said, if TxDOT were to come in and do an improvement, that they could bite this a little bit. So any questions on that? No? Okay. All right. Well, that's it with that. I know. Sorry, I talked a lot.
Okay, so we've got discussion, possible action. Any other questions, comments on it?
Can you go back to the map that had the whole city, including the new proposed?
This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
On Old Highway 90.
Okay.
Going from the hill all the way down, it goes all the way down to Lions Park and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You have it going, or it shows to be turning to the highway, which makes no sense because there's no crossing there.
Mm-hmm.
But when y'all had the presentation here in City Hall, I came in, you were discussing with one, I was with your counterpart, and she was talking about going back to safety and riding bicycles throughout town, walking and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably, in my opinion, besides Country Village, because people do walk there, is one of the most highly used for walking, because that hill provides a little extra resistance to you. We get biking, we get walking, we get all sorts going up that hill from 4 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. I've gone up at 4:30 in the morning and people are walking, running, lights on, everything.
Yeah.
I think your wife
Smart
even runs
wife.
through.
I should say
She even
smart
runs
wife.
through there about that time.
Watch out. She's
Yeah.
a mean one.
So that being said, I know Scott was implemented with looking at all the streets
Okay.
and seeing what's worse, what needs to be paved, chip sealed, whatever.
Mhm.
When y'all crossed Constantinople, y'all would have noticed something right in front of Valerie's house. As you're walking up that hill,
Mhm.
you have the edge of the pavement falling off.
Yeah. Mhm.
You get the little, I
Yes.
guess you'd call it pop off. I don't know what you would call it, fall off, edge,
Yeah.
break off, whatever.
Mhm.
My recommendation to her, and I was hoping to see it in here because I made it quite clear, when you want to utilize, especially biking, and you see that little cutoff,
Uh-huh.
you're no longer on the side of the road. You're not trying to avoid it. So you get put more into the road. Thus, you get closer to oncoming traffic.
Mhm.
I believe for the safety part of biking and walking on streets edges needs to start with maintenance of the roads.
Maintenance of okay.
So I had a discussion with another person within staff, and it comes down to we don't have very much staff on the street side, from my understanding. And if one of the guys is fairly young, they say like out of high school or something, like really, really young.
Yeah.
I think our staff needs to be more aware of preventative maintenance, upkeep.
Okay.
Because I know further down the road in Constantinople, right in front of my house, same thing. You get wash off because of road runoff, cars going off the road, and the edges of the road break off.
Mhm.
So Scott was tasked with the drainage part. Whenever I'll use another example because I see it and I've tried helping.
Okay.
They chip sealed Jackson Street at Houston and Jackson, and they chipped it from the highway all the way to Washington.
Mhm.
Well, when they came and they graded everything, they just graded.
Mhm.
Well, the drainage, which is on the south side of Houston Street,
Mhm.
it's no longer a V where all the water would go into that drain. It now goes along the road,
Mhm.
and so it's washing off what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It washes away the dirt and the edge of the pavement. So when cars come around that corner, they avoid the manhole cover and they go to the edge. And so now on the edges, so every car is chip, 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 and that road is starting to be deteriorated.
Mhm.
So in my opinion, I think staff needs to, and I'm not trying to call them out. It's just lack of what you don't know, you don't recognize.
Mhm.
I believe our street maintenance need to be aware of, hey, when I see a lip, that shouldn't be a lip. It should be a rounded edge or fill it in with road-based caliche
Mhm.
to prevent the road wear,
Yeah.
runoff or breaking off.
Mhm.
And so because Old Highway 90 Houston Street is walked so much, quite a bit of that is happening on Constantinople. It's happening, like you said, that's where people cross.
Yeah.
And y'all's picture showed exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Y'all were starting to go to the center
Yeah.
because y'all were avoiding that.
It's right.
Yeah, right there. Whoever that is on the far right,
Yeah, right here.
right between you and that far right person, there is a void there. It's probably like 4 inches deep right now. And so, because all the water coming down from runoff, it washes all that away. So, that being said, one, the drainage ditches do need to be cleaned to force the water into the ditch.
Mhm.
And also, in my opinion, the staff for road needs to be aware, hey, we need to maintain the edge of the road so it doesn't deteriorate.
Got it.
So that's the part of the safety of biking and walking because, like I said, it just forces the pedestrians into the road
Mhm.
nearing incoming traffic. So that, in my belief, is a start when it comes. I think we can do something now.
Got it. Okay.
So hopefully that helps and hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But that's what I've noticed on quite a few roads throughout the town.
Yeah. So maybe education. Yeah.
Preventative maintenance, basically, and
Yeah.
and not having to be told, because that's one of those things you should be able to drive around. Hey, that should be filled. It shouldn't be like that because the next rain or 2 cars later is going to break off another inch towards the
Yeah.
center of the road.
Yeah. Okay.
Something like that.
Good point.
I see quite a bit.
Any other comments? Were you looking for an action on this, or was it just
If we
review
could
it?
get this over to city council, that'd be great. Or if y'all feel like y'all need it to come back to y'all again, that's completely up to y'all. So
So if we'd like, we could make a motion to recommend that it be approved and moved on to city council.
Do you think you need to incorporate the bridge like you were talking about, or just as a comment to city council would be approved?
I'm gonna go ahead. I think that me as staff thinks that needs to be incorporated. It's something, and it might be in there. I know I've read it, but I don't remember reading specifically about the bridge. I'm going to make that. That was the whole point of us doing this. So I'm going to make that recommendation already too. And I have that written down. So,
Okay.
yeah. And the same thing with Mr. Fuentes. I'm going to read through the plan again and see maybe where preventative maintenance or education of drainage and streets, edge of streets or something like that. And see where we can implement that too. So, yeah. Sorry.
All right.
I think it's well written.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll go ahead
All
and make the motion to for the approval of the draft to be presented to the city council as written.
With changes,
Oh, well, yeah,
With staff.
change.
with staff changes.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Not, we'll take a vote. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Right. On to now item B, discussion of sections 4 and 5 of the draft sign ordinance to gather feedback and guide future revisions.
Okay.
Still got a little bit of time.
Yeah, we still got a little time, so I'm gonna go ahead and go through these fairly quickly. But I know I talk fast sometimes, so if you need me to slow it down, just let me know, and I'll do that. So, all right, but let me get back to my papers. I make notes about all this stuff, so. Okay, so tonight's focus is just sections 4 and 5 of the sign ordinance. So it's the enforcement mechanisms, non-conforming signs, and abandoned/dilapidated signs. So we're really getting into we're still not into the meat of the sign ordinance. I believe that's next time in section 6 about the sign types, but this is definitely important because people always have a lot of questions about things like that. So key improvements. So clear notice procedures. So before there's not notice procedures, and Valerie, actually, I lied last time because I was like, no, we wouldn't do enforcement language in this ordinance. And then I'm like, there's literally a whole section about enforcement language. And one of those things was notice procedures, yeah, and define compliance timelines and removal authority established. So if something is not up to our standards and they've been given proper notification, that we are allowed to remove that item. Okay, and so non-conforming signs, what's in this section, it defines existing non-conforming defines what existing non-conforming signs are, allows continued use under these conditions, and establishes compliance triggers. I'm trying to think what I have on here. Okay. Oh wow, so I made this presentation for the last April's meeting, and so now I'm like trying to rewire my brain a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this paper right here. Okay, so in section 4, so the key elements include define and regulate abandoned signs, including requirements for blinking sign faces, establishes clear maintenance and safety standards for all signage, identifies hazardous and dilapidated signs and requires repair or removal, and provides a structured enforcement process, including a written notice of violation, the defined compliance timeframe, which is 10 days, and daily violations for continued non-compliance. This authorizes the city to remove the signs that are not brought into compliance and improves clarity and consistency for all enforcement. So that's probably the biggest issues that we have right now, is that we don't have it clearly defined in our existing ordinance what code enforcement is supposed to be doing when there is a sign that is either dilapidated or non-conforming. So they're kind of doing it willy-nilly on a case-by-case basis, but this gives them some more teeth. So when they're going out into the field, because we actually do have a lot of these, we get a lot of non-conforming signs that's probably the second most talked about thing is non-conforming signs. And so this gives code enforcement a little bit more teeth, because now they have regulations that they can look back on and they can say, hey, I did your written notice, that's step 1, you have 10 days, and if you don't comply with it, then we can do violations every day after that if we see fit. And then of course that goes to, it still has to go through the court process at some point, but it gives the code enforcement more teeth to cite. So, and that's just something that we don't have right now. And let me see. Okay. And so another thing, like I said, it goes into the more of the definitions what abandoned, dilapidated, and sign violations are. We do have language inside the existing ordinance. And I would say it's strong. It's just hard to read. So when this went through legal, because it did already go through legal, a very brief like, hey, is there anything like red flag? Because I don't want to present something to y'all that I just know I can't even put in here. And so when we went to legal, all of these things that we're putting in here are the city is legally able to enforce, which is good. Because I think that there are some things that we have in our existing ordinance that are not enforceable anymore. But that was written quite some time ago, so that makes sense. Laws change, things change, enforcement changes. And so first it goes just through, like I said, the definitions of what abandoned or dilapidated signs are. And the requirements are those. So like the first bullet is the owner of any dilapidated sign shall remove the sign within 30 days after receiving written notice from the city administrator. We did define in the definitions it's city administrator or their designee, because it's not always going to be Scott going out there banging on a door. But we don't have to put that in every instance here. It's in the definitions. Or the adoption of the sign ordinance, whichever is later. So like I said, it's just giving some hard numbers to how long a sign can be out there that's non-conforming and abandoned. So let's see. And then it also goes into on section B. So the following are required for the use, display, maintenance, or permitting of an alteration of any abandoned sign or supporting structure, regardless of when the sign is abandoned. So it's just saying that whenever they're going in and they're fixing up the sign, they're allowed to do like material, like or the same quality. So they can't go back out there and if it's a really crappy sign, put a banner up. That's not allowed. They have to go back and they have to make it a better looking sign. And this is just, like I said, giving some more teeth to that regulations, because right now we don't define that. We just say you have to go make it look better, but that's when it becomes subjective, and you don't want to be super subjective when it comes to signs, because trust me, people will take it and run with it. So you do want to make sure that you have all your bases covered. And then in section C, the sign violations or removals, this gives the detailed process of what will happen if a sign is in violation and the removal of that sign. And it's very straightforward. Yes,
Brianna, the question I had when it says within the city or its EJT, that whole part there says empowered to enter upon the premises. Or I'm kind of thinking the EJT is, aren't you reaching out there? Look, did legal see that?
Yeah, so that's actually one. There's 3 things that a city can impose on the ETJ, and that's sign and signage, it's parkland, and it's.
Would you be sending a code compliance person out?
So you're right. We would have to use our best judgment here. But I think the last example I gave was, let's just say at the Circle K, that one is not in our city limits, or even that piece, the Masters property that's right front. Now, if they were trying to come and put a big billboard right there, I don't think the citizens of Castroville will be like.
There's actually Priscilla. I was actually going to reference that the beautification. I think it's beautification of Texas statute. They went to the state. And there's supposed to be no billboards placed between Fortin and Hondo.
Yeah.
I think that was like 9 years ago they did that, because I don't know if you ever noticed when they built the mansions at golf course, they put that billboard sign right at the edge of Highway 90.
Yeah.
And no billboard can be within 400 feet of the right of way, and they moved it back 400 feet about a month later. So no billboard should be erected between Fortin and Hondo, and that's actually in state statute.
Oh, good.
It's like the 90 beautification statute is, and they fought for it and they got it. And it was really nice. And whenever they started talking about the sign on the east side of town, they brought that up. I don't know if you caught that or not, but because of how big it has to be a billboard. I think there's a certain square footage that takes it over and trumps it. Nope, you can't have it.
Yeah.
So I didn't.
Yeah. I was just, like I said, I was just kind of questioning the enforcement possibilities of sending somebody out in an EJT. If you're going to send a singular code compliance officer, you can't send your police officer out there because he's out of jurisdiction by that time.
You're
County's not going to do it.
I think
Yeah.
the other thing is health hazard.
health hazard. What do you mean?
To be able to go into the property or enforce.
Yeah, there's definitely limitation. There's definitely ways that you can go onto our property. You have to give a certain amount of notice. You have to do all these things, which is kind of listed here.
Okay.
But you are after you've done all of those procedures, you are allowed to go onto somebody's property and take that sign down if you see fit and you want to pay for it. That's the thing, is that a lot of time it comes down to cost, and the city would have to decide if that was worth the cost of them to go take something like that down. So
But within city limits, yeah, I see that absolutely.
Yeah.
But in an EJT, I think, man, you're getting into a really gray area.
I agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
But you got to remember.
if I'm the code compliance person and a city administrator says, hey, go out there, 5 miles out of town and go tell them people they can't have that sign, I'd be like, I don't think I'm going to do that today.
But you got to remember, when you got into the ETJ, you signed the paper to be within it.
Well, that's true.
So you must.
Well, not
Yeah.
necessarily
And most
completely
of-
true. But.
And most of the ETJ, it is only a half-mile buffer around the existing city limits, most of it. There are some instances where there are some properties that decided to sign a paper, I think it was like in the 1990s, to annex into our ETJ. But most of it is a half-mile buffer, and that is and the reason why the state allowed for that was because you're right, we're a small community, but imagine where like the fireworks stand is right across from the hotel. If they decided they wanted to put in like a 45-foot flashing bright fireworks are here sign, then we have the authority to say, no, you can't do that. Like that takes away from our community. Things like that are just right on the outskirts of our city limits, where we want to try and keep that small town feel, because people will go crazy with signs. Yeah. So I think that's what the thought process is behind it. And you're right.
Well, as long as legal looked at it, said, we can do that.
Yeah.
Or we'll back them up if they do something out there.
Now, does that mean that if, let's just say past Fitwell, there's a sign that's 32 square feet when it can only be 28 square feet, is code compliance probably going to go do something about that? Probably not. Like if it's in the ETJ. It's going to be just a significant hazard or something that's just going to affect community character, I think, more in the ETJ. So I think it's just more so the city, if something were like that to come in, we have the authority to get rid of it because we have it in an ordinance. So, yeah. Because if not, then we can't do anything about it. So, thoughts, Jim?
No.
On section 5,
Questions, yeah?
on section 5, non-conforming sign on number 1, it says all non-conforming signs shall be brought into compliance with the ordinance in accordance with the provision of these regulations. Does that reference 5? It only needs to be up to date when the land use changes? Is that what it's saying, or is it saying it needs to be come into once this ordinance is accepted?
Yeah, no, it says whenever a land use changes.
Okay, that's what I was curious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what it says. So if that's something y'all don't see fit, then, but I mean, if it's a non-conforming sign, but that you have to be careful about that, because right now, like the Haybee's Bakery and Sammy's, those signs are way too big for what our ordinance says. So if they were to never not be a restaurant, that means that they would have to bring those signs down. So it's just something to think about. Mm-hmm. All right, and so thanks for the segue, Marcus. So non-conforming signs. So what a lot of people refer to this as is grandfathered. So these are signs. So whenever you adopted your ordinance, if there's something that doesn't fall within the restrictions or the guidelines of the requirements of that ordinance, but they're already existing, that's considered existing non-conforming. So that's where the language for that is listed right here. And I can tell you that this language is a lot better than the language that we have right now in our existing sign ordinance. Like I said, it's another thing that had to go through legal, because I believe there were some changes like 7 years ago about what this could be considered as a non-conforming sign, what you could do to it, and all those things. And so this meets all of those updated laws that were put into place. Let's see, and then it also gives you the sign requirements for relief procedures. If you need a petition for a waiver because for non-conforming, maybe, okay, remember how I told you earlier that you don't want to try and code for every instance. Sammy's They have that sign there. It's been there for, I don't know, 50 years, however long it's been there. And in that instance, maybe they petition for that waiver. So if the use does change for whatever reason, they petition for that waiver, and then they can keep their sign. So you give them an outlet that just doesn't say that other people can do the same. Like, but if that was imagine if that was a really ugly sign that y'all really hated as a city, or people have been asking you to get rid of it, then when that use changes, it gives the city some teeth to say, nope, I'm sorry, but that was a non-conforming sign. Now you need to change it or update it or make it look better or whatever that looks like, So, all right. And, okay, I think I'm done talking. Let's see. I know I didn't go through it as in-depth as I did the first few sections, so I understand if we need to come back to that. Like I said, it was a little, I forgot a little bit of things since that last meeting. So I'm trying to think if I hit on all the major things. So verifies when repairs are in full compliance. Yeah, that's another one so it gives the definition for redevelopment or changing use. So it clarifies when repairs are require full compliance with current standards, introduces a more structured approach for relief and administrative decision making, and creates a pathway towards long-term compliance over time. So, so that means that maybe they can't change it tomorrow, but they can get onto a plan to say, okay, in the next year, then that needs to be completely removed, or that needs to be changed or updated, or whatever that looks like. So.
All right.
Brianna, I did have a question, I guess, on the 10-day rule. Now, I think the way you were explaining it, it gives them 10 days after notice to begin the compliance, or they must be in compliance within 10 days after being noticed?
So it says if the violation is not corrected within 10 days, calendar days, or within the time frame specified in the notice, the city may take appropriate enforcement action, including removal of the sign. So that's saying 10 days.
Be 10 days after they were notified that you have a
Yes, sir.
non-conforming sign.
Yes.
Okay.
If they come to the city with, let's say, a contractor that's going to fix the sign, but they can't get there for 14 days.
Yeah.
Would the city, is that something that's up to the city to wait if they want to, or do we
Yeah, because
need?
it says 10 calendar days or within the specified notice. And it does say the city may take appropriate action. So that doesn't mean that it's necessarily, our code enforcement is all about working with people. And so I do know when I was reading through this language, I was trying to make sure that it didn't sound, you want it to sound harsh or have enough teeth so they can enforce it.
Yeah, right.
But you don't want it to be overly burdensome where if they decide, you know what, they said they can get a contractor out in 14 days. So there's a lot of may and shall, but may and shall for the city to do. So the city may allow for this, or the city shall, things like that. But it doesn't give a lot of wiggle room for the actual applicant or the signed property owner. Because they want that stuff to be pretty hard.
Because even if there are repairs, there's a permit process they probably have to go through for
That's
some
true.
of this.
Yeah. They still have to go through permitting, which is my department. Depending on what they're doing, they may have to go through permitting. Not all signs have to go through permitting, but if it's a pretty significant repair, then I would say probably yes. So.
Okay. Almost to 7.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of at a decision point. Do we have more comments, want to digest this further, or what are your thoughts on as it's written?
I think it's good.
Yep.
That's right.
So that being said, I don't have any other comments either, so I'd entertain a motion.
Oh,
No.
we don't have to move.
Nope,
Yeah, I was
we don't
gonna
have
say,
to
I
just
think
take
it's-
notes. Never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, nope. This was just
Got
a
ahead of myself.
discussion, and then next time we'll bring back another chapter.
We'll do
That was the
another,
only one was
Yeah.
discussion.
1 or 2 chapters.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Well, then we'll move on to the next item, discussion on future agenda items. Any to be presented that you guys have on your mind?
I can't I'm sure Brianna has a list.
Yeah.
No, actually, I mean,
Keep chugging away on this.
we'll keep chugging away on the sign. I'm trying to think if there's anything coming down the pipeline from city council right now. Probably the parkland dedication ordinance again.
If they get it done.
Yeah. So I mean, I
months.
think right now our plate's pretty full unless y'all think of those minor changes that you can be making to the existing ordinances. I know mayor's really into that, but I do know at some point they said that council was going to provide a list to y'all of what they think needed to be revised, but we haven't gotten that yet. So maybe I can reach out to Scott and Mayor and be like, hey, we really need that list because now we're working through some of these things so we know what our next steps are. So I wouldn't worry about it. I'll figure some things out.
Very good. And item 7, adjourn. That's
So moved.
6:58.